welcome, and thank you all for attending the CU Northwest May Power Hour monthly class, which is our member trackers in CU Base. My name is Ellie Barton Harding, and I will be presenting our webinar today. So during the presentation, all of your phones have been placed on mute to eliminate that background noise. I can stop periodically to answer any questions, and you may also use the chat feature in your GoToMeeting session to submit any questions during the webinar presentation. To utilize this function, you'll click on the chat panel in the control panel and then enter your chat or your question in the provided field and click send. So today we'll be learning about member trackers. We're going to learn what the trackers are, how to configure your tracker and memo types, enter a new tracker, update an existing one, follow up on a member tracker, and then print a hard copy of that tracker and why your member trackers are an important part of your credit union's workflow. So first thing we want to look at is exactly what are trackers. And the member tracker system that's contained within CU Base it's a helpful and easy to use tool that helps the credit union staff keep on top of important member requests, your issues, documentations. They can contain follow-ups on payments due, reminders to contact a member, schedule an appointment. And because they do remain attached to a member's account until they're manually purged, they can also serve as documentation about your OFAC scans, which your auditors want to know about, any notices sent, and then your collection activity. So adding tracker entry and your follow-up to your daily workflow can be especially helpful for your credit union audits. So each tracker record is made up of a series of one or more conversations, and they're simply notes or records of a specific contact that you have made with a member. So when you create your tracker, CU Base is going to automatically record your date, your time, and that 2-digit employee ID of each individual conversation note. So some of your trackers might only have 1 or 2 conversations, such as an issue that comes up and is then resolved and put away, while your other ones, like your collection card tracker, might retain many years' worth of conversations about the member's delinquency history. So in order to ensure that you have your intact historical record for auditing purposes, past conversation notes cannot be deleted or modified, although you can add new conversation notes at any time. Because of the fact that these trackers are time-stamped with your date, your time, your employee, the outcome, the notes that you enter, these are admissible in a court of law should you have any legal action against the member or the member against you. So first I want to look at some of our audit tracker types. So what we're going to look at is this particular one that you see on your screen is attached to the member's base share account. And these are OFAC scans and results that are stored in your member's audit tracker. You'll notice on this particular one, we have the date, the time, the employee ID that ran the OFAC scan, along with your pass-fail results. So this particular OFAC scan passed with no suspected matches, and the OFAC scan tracker is permanently stored in the member's main share account. So then we have a notice tracker, and the tracker you see on this slide is for a notice of an overdrawn account or a negative account balance. This would be recorded in the member's share draft tracker. Unlike the OFAC scan on the previous slide, it's always recorded on the member's base share. Since this particular notice dealt with the member's share draft account, the notice tracker then is recorded on that share draft account. This particular notice tracker, it maintains the record of the laser notices that are generated by CU Base Gold. So now, exactly like your, excuse me, I apologize here. So now, exactly like your previous slide, this e-notice tracker is for a delinquent loan. And the tracker record that would be stored is a permanent collection record in the loan sub-account that was delinquent. So this tracker also details the same thing. We have the account balance information that was written on the member notice, your current balance, your last payment, your amount delinquent, your fine amount. So since this particular tracker is noted on the member's account, there's really no need to keep a hard copy of the actual notice that you mailed out to the member. So now we have our collection tracker. And it's designed to have a continuous addition of conversations or notes. So therefore, there will only be one collection tracker per member. So in the case of the collection tracker, the tracker records are attached to the member's main share account and remain there even after the member's account base is closed. And then notice the memo types. Now these are, that we see right here, we have promise to pay, broken promise, repossession. These are configurable for your credit union. So now that we've looked at some examples of some member trackers, I want to take a look at the configurations. So what we would do is we would access your menu, MNTRAK, and go to option number 7 to configure the tracker types. And that's where we see a listing of your existing tracker types. So to create a new tracker type, you're going to click Add down in the lower left-hand corner. And then that's going to bring you to the next screen. So on this screen, we've entered a tracker type of ES, which is a description of escrow processing, and then a short description of ESC. And these fields that we've entered are what your staff members will see when entering trackers for this type. So I keep in mind that maybe following a logical sequence, hence the ES for escrow processing and ESC. So I have unchecked to display in your sales tracker leads and follow-ups, and also unchecked to allow trackers to be purged, since I will want this to be part of the permanent tracker record. And then you're going to press enter to save. So now we will look at configuring a memo type code in our menu MNTRAK, option number 8. And the memo codes are simply a summary title of what your tracker is about. So your memo type codes are attached to each individual conversation note within a tracker record. Each of your memo types then is configured to be associated with a tracker type. So as an example, in your collection card tracker record, you would flag a conversation note as promise to pay, or bankrupt, or disability insurance begun, disability insurance claim pending, something like that. Then for your sales tracker, you could use memo types such as contact member, or not interested, or pending, and that type of thing. Then you can freehand any additional notes on your conversation that you had within the tracker. So this screen shows a listing of your existing memo types and the tracker types that they are attached to. So at this point, what we want to do is create a memo type to go with our new tracker type, which is escrow processing. So to do this, you're going to click on the add on the left-hand side of the screen. You're going to enter the 2-digit code that we created, which is for escrow processing tracker, in our tracker type box. Or you can also click on that spyglass right next to it to choose from your listing. And then create a memo type. Again, I followed that logical sequence that helps fit my description. And then a memo type. So I chose IN with a memo type description of insurance vendor. I also chose to use for links to external documents, as you see right here. I did not click on use for permanent underwriting comments. That particular box is for your collection card, your XX collection type trackers only. And also notice I did not click use to monitor account daily for a specific transaction activity like a promise to pay. If you were to check that box and create the appropriate tracker conversation, then CU-based is going to monitor for member deposits, such as promise to pay transactions. And then what you do is right at the bottom, you're going to arrow forward or press enter to save it. So then this brings us back to your memo type definition listing, where we can see the memo type we just created for our new tracker type. We can continue to add more if you want to, or if you see you have made an error, you can highlight the memo type and then click change at the bottom, or correct your memo type or delete it altogether. So now we're going to add a new tracker to a member's account. So you're going to need to access the member account either through your member inquiry or phone operator, either one, at the bottom of any CU-based Gold menu or screen. You're going to highlight the member share account and press enter or select. And if you're in phone operator, you're going to highlight the member share account and click on inquiry. So just as an additional note, you can attach a tracker to any of your sub-accounts. Most credit unions, and it is best practice, prefer to use the main share account so that the records of all of your tracker conversations are in one location. So then, on the lower left side of your member account inquiry screen is the tab Tracker Review, or F21, and then you click on that tab. So now, as you can tell, this particular member already has history in his tracker review. So we can either add to an existing tracker, thereby making a string of conversations, or you create a new one. So for better understanding, we're going to do both. You're going to add to an existing tracker and create a new tracker. So first, we're going to add to one of the existing trackers in this member's record. To do this, you're going to highlight an existing tracker to add to, and then click on Update. So if you wanted to see the information that already exists in this record, you can highlight it and press View, the other option at the bottom of the listing. So I chose a memo from our Spyglass list, which is outbound maintenance. The tracker I created of the ES escrow processing is not available because we're adding that to an existing tracker. Only those memo types which are already configured for this tracker type are going to appear for you as an option. So if I'm speaking with someone other than the member, I can enter the person's name in the speaking to field. Then I can enter my conversation notes. So I entered member's email address invalid. I contacted him on his cell. He left a message on voicemail to contact credit union, etc. So at this point, we can save or continue. But before we do this, I want to point out the other function buttons that are available on this screen. So from this particular screen, I can access the member's phone operator inquiry right here on the left. I can view contact information where a pop-up box is going to display the member's home, phone, work numbers, email address. We can view household information, look at additional signers for any loans that this member may have. And I can look at other conversations in this tracker type and print notices. So now what we're going to do is click on this box right here to save and continue. So on this particular screen, I've left the box clicked to update last contact date for this account. It's recommended that you always leave this flag checked to update the last contact date for the sales tracker of this account. So I've also checked that this entry does require a follow-up. I entered a follow-up date and then I assigned it to another employee. So this serves as a great documentation and communication tool with your other team members. So as we're going to see in a few minutes, you can assign trackers to a specific team member for follow-up. And this is especially helpful if I'm calling maybe about that invalid email address and the member starts asking questions about loan rates. Then the tracker follow-up will let your lending department know that they have a lead to follow up on. So now we just go ahead and arrow forward or press enter to save. And so this is going to bring us back to the member tracker review screen. And you'll notice your yellow highlighted rows. That means that this particular tracker has a follow-up assigned to it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new tracker entry using that tracker type that we just configured a few minutes ago at the beginning of the presentation. Last time we highlighted one of the existing trackers and chose update. This time we're going to click on the tracker entry tab on the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So now we get a pop-up window. I've typed in a keyword or phrase of insurance change, and that is a free-form field, and that's going to help sort through your potentially dozens of trackers in the future to very quickly find this particular one. So I have left the member account field of the 000, your base share, as it is. I could type in a loan subaccount if I wanted to, and this tracker would attach to that loan. However, I want all of my members' trackers attached to the main share account. Even though in this situation, my tracker refers to a specific loan, and the reason to further explain why we would want it attached to the main share is because loans and other subaccounts come and go. They get opened, they get closed, loans get paid off. If your tracker card, which a member can only have one tracker card per membership, is attached to one of those other subaccounts, then the loan or the subaccount gets closed, and then it becomes very difficult to locate, okay, which one of these 20, 25 closed accounts or subaccounts, where am I going to find that tracker card? If you just leave it attached to your base share account, then you're always going to know where it is. You can update tracker notes on closed accounts and closed memberships. It is the only feature that you can update on something which has been closed, would be your tracker information. Because as we know, just because a membership closes or an account closes doesn't mean that further documentation isn't necessary. So then notice on the screen the location is a field which I can change. However, your date and your time pre-fills for permanent record of exactly when this conversation occurred. And that's down here on the lower left. So at this time, you're either going to arrow forward or press enter to move on to the next screen. So at this point, your tracker entry screen looks exactly like it did when we were adding a conversation to an existing tracker. Now, I've chosen my memo type from the Spyglass, and the one we created earlier, I can change to whom I'm speaking with and free enter the conversation notes. So notice the additional access buttons on the left, again for accessing phone operator, household info, additional signers, and etc. So if you notice on this, the previous conversation in this tracker type are viewable there in the lower right corner. So you can see what has already been said or accomplished or who's been spoken to without actually removing yourself from the tracker entry screen. Now I can leave the box checked to entry just made requires a follow-up, enter follow-up date and the person to assign it to, or I can alternatively unclick that box and the date and the staff and the fields for the date and the staff member for your follow-up goes away. So now I can arrow forward or press enter to save. So now our tracker entry that we just created appears on your tracker listing. Now, as we saw with the trackers we just entered, you can have multiple trackers of the same type attached to a member's account. So, as an example, this menu screen shows there are 2 audit trackers in the type column. And of course, as I mentioned, the exception to this rule is your collection tracker, which is also known as the collection card XX. You'll see it on the very top one. It says card. On the screen, you can see the type card, which is the type for our collection tracker notes. The collection tracker works exactly like all other trackers with one real important exception. You can only have one collection tracker per membership. Once your collection XX type has been created, you would use the update choice on the existing type collection. You would then create a string of conversations that just go on. So this is going to create an ongoing string of notes and conversations. So since each entry is date and time stamped by CUBase, the collection tracker then creates this chronological history for use in your bankruptcy and your legal proceedings involving your members' accounts. So as we all know, there are situations where contact with the member and collection activity continue long after the member has closed his membership account. So as an example, that would be a charged-off loan or a bankruptcy maybe that can continue for several years, and then your continued documentation is going to be important. So one of the really exceptional features to the CUBase tracker system is you can add and update existing trackers, as I mentioned before, for your closed members. You would access your closed members through member inquiry that can be located again at the bottom of any CUBase menu. You're going to follow the exact same steps to create or update a tracker as if the member were still open. So now what we're going to do is look at working with your member follow-ups. So for convenience, there are several places in CUBase where you can work the follow-ups that are created when a tracker has been assigned to an employee. You can access this follow-up option within the individual member's accounts by accessing that same MNTRAK menu, which is where we went to configure our tracker types and our member type codes. It would be option number 1. You can access it from your collection menu, MNCOLL, your master menu, the main menu that you first access when you log into CUBase, which is option number 18, or also in your lending menu, in menu MNLOAN number 11. And since we've been working in the menu MNTRAK, I've chosen this option. And if you want to hang on just a second here, I do have a question. And what I'm being asked is there an alert for the employee that they have a tracker waiting for them? And I'm assuming, Rachel, by that you mean some type of a pop-up box when the person enters the tracker and assigns it to the other employee. And at this time, no, there's not such a feature. I know that you've asked. If not, is it something that we can be looking into to adding for future releases? On that one, Rachel, let me do some research and get back to you and see if there's anything in the kitchen in the works on that. If not, I can get with you and find out if maybe it would be appropriate to send in, you know, an idea recommendation. But let me look and see, because I know that I have had other people ask me that on previous phone calls and webinars that I've done. So I will get back with you on that one. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let me go on to my next slide here. Okay, the first tracker that we have created this morning, we assigned a follow-up for our staff member, KW. And then notice the yellow highlighted fields. So the highlight follow-up dates means that the follow-up is past due. As you see up here, January 20th of 14. A highlighted member number would mean that the account is closed. And to work this follow-up, we would highlight the tracker we need to follow up on or work, and then choose follow-up from the listing beneath. So the tracker entry at this point is exactly the same as when we created that tracker and updated one. We've entered the details of our conversation with the member, and then our next step will be to save and continue, just like we did before. So again, notice in the right-hand corner of the screen, right down here, our last conversation appears again as an easy reference tool. And we can, that's really handy because you can tell at a glance what was said to this member during the last contact. Options on the left are exactly the same as our previous tracker entry. We can jump to that phone operator, get contact info, etc., additional signers, previous conversations. So now what you're going to do, we have entered in our tracker that we spoke to this member, he's in the middle of filing bankruptcy, etc. You then click on Save and Continue. So this time we can assign another follow-up by entering the follow-up date, the person to call back, or we can unclick the follow-up and instead mark that follow-up as complete. So marking your tracker follow-up as complete saves the tracker, marks it as complete on the follow-up listing. So at this time, we would arrow forward or press Enter to save and complete. Now, as an additional note on this, one of the many advantages to using the tracker follow-up feature is that when those situations occur where one of your staff members is out of the office, you can still access that person's follow-ups and complete them. So no follow-up promises get untouched. It's not a locked feature, doesn't require a password for one employee to access the follow-ups of another one. So then in returning back to our tracker menu, the MNTRAK, I'd like to point out the print functions that we have available. So we just worked with outstanding follow-ups directly from our screen. Situations occur sometimes. You can also print the follow-ups for up to 5 of your employees at a time by accessing your MNTRAK option number 20. This would be useful, again, if one of the staff members was on vacation, someone called in sick. Lines of communications that you have between the credit union and your members are going to be kept. So then once you access that menu MNTRAK number 20, your screen is going to look exactly what you see present on my webinar screen. It's going to request your date ranges, your employee IDs, which follow-ups to include, etc. So once you have established what criteria it is that you want, you would just press Enter, arrow forward. Notice that many of these particular fields are optional. So it allows you to customize exactly what's on your report. Some of this information you may not need. So you would just not choose to enter anything into those fields. So now I want to take a quick look at our other tracker printing options that we have. To print member trackers by accessing our menu MNTRAK number 21. So this would be for those situations where you will need a hard copy of your members tracker conversations. You have the option then to print a single member's conversations or a group. As we go through this report option screen, notice that, again, many of these fields are marked optional. Allows you to be member and date specific or more general, to choose a broad range of members across a more general time frame. As always, keep in mind in the lower left corner your I that you see on this particular box, third one from the right, that will access you to learn about this feature. So when you're on this particular screen, for example, if you click on this I, more information is going to pop up that's going to tell you specifically what each of these fields will require as far as data to be entered. So it's a really helpful, useful tool. I always like to throw that in there to remind everybody that if you're confused, I don't know what it's asking for on any of your CU-based screens that you're on, be sure and remember that I, because that does give you the more detailed information about data that would be required or necessary on that particular screen. So then in looking at, okay, why are they important? They provide that permanent documentation that you need for events, conversations, activity on a member's account. So trackers can provide that documentation for your legal proceedings, collection efforts that's going to help protect the credit union. They provide communication between your staff members or between different departments regarding follow-up on leads for lending or credit union services or collection efforts. They allow your staff members to be more efficient when they promise follow-ups with your members and with their time. So no more looking for that post-it note with the member's new phone number. It's very easy to just, with a couple of clicks of the mouse, get into trackers and make a note. And again, what this does is it provides a central location for storage of all your documented activity for each of your members. So they can only be deleted through credit union configuration. So again, when that membership is closed, the tracker remains attached to the member's account indefinitely. So then as a resource, or how do you find out more about member trackers, there's a lot of documentation out there. If you go to our website at cunorthwest.com, under the reference link and CU-based reference docs, you would click on C. How to work with member follow-ups, again, there's a PDF out there. How to access trackers for cross sales. Learn about this feature was the I that we saw on the little box at the bottom of any of your menu screen. And then the member tracker system and overview also. And if anybody wants this particular page of the presentation, I can certainly email the information on there so that each of you have access to those links. And then I mentioned again about clicking on that Learn About This feature link when you're on any of the screens that provide you detailed instruction and information. So now I want to thank you all for joining me today. And 1 second, I'm going to take us all off of mute if there are any questions out there. And as always, as well, you know that if you think of any questions, you can always email me directly. You can email our client services at csr@cunorthwest.com, or you all have our phone number to call in if you have any additional questions. So I thank you all so much for joining me today. It has been my pleasure. Again at our next monthly Power Hour or month-long education series webinar. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.